it's entirely fitting that we're talking about changing the rules here in Corsham. Don't let the quaint market town appearance fool you. This community has been tearing up the rule book ever since Brunel blasted a tunnel through Box Hill to make way for his Great Western Railway in the 19th century. And I'll come back to that later. Many years ago, I followed the rules. I was a conscientious civil servant doing the bidding of Her Majesty's government in the Department of Health. And then I took a risk, a leap of faith, and I left. I left to champion an inclusive digital society, to campaign for digital skills for everyone, and to encourage social and economic change through technology. And in the process, I've become what is known as a woman in tech. And we're a minority. Just 17% of the UK tech workforce is female, and only 10% of engineers are women. So this minority group is by its very nature a rule-breaking one. But we women in tech have a shared responsibility, and that's to make sure that the tech workforce is as diverse as the society around it. And let's think about that for a moment. So technology isn't just there for a proportion of the population. And tech products aren't just bought by men, despite the fact we all know they love their gadgets. So it's not just a point of equality, but it's one of fundamental economic sense, that the creativity and ideas that produce goods and services for the whole population are produced by teams that represent the whole population. And for the good of our economy, as well as to better represent our consumer base, we need girls to see tech as a career for them and not to shy away from science, technology, engineering, and maths subjects in schools. But we also need parents, teachers, and youth mentors to start seeing careers in tech as being as much about creativity, design, entrepreneurship, and communications as they are about coding or about studying pure science. And I'm a case in point. I may be a woman in tech, but I'm not a techie. I studied humanities, not sciences. So technology is changing our world. And many would say it now rules our world. Today, we're dependent on it in a way that we've never been before. And a whole world of knowledge, the internet, is available to anyone at the touch of a button. It's the most egalitarian and open opportunity that's ever been invented. Today, whole continents can leapfrog over the decades of development that we went through by using mobile and other technologies to bring health, education, and even light into homes which had none before. We can benefit from the most extraordinary advances in health research that seemed impossible just a generation ago. We can see and chat with our friends and families across the world from the comfort of our own home, and we can switch them off when we've had enough. We can order almost anything from anywhere at any time. And soon, it'll be routine for our shopping to be delivered by drones or by self-driving vans. But let's also think about what happens when we do these things. So when you use a search engine, can you really distinguish between genuine search results and paid adverts? Because many people can't. Do you know why those pop-up ads that you get on your devices always seem to know exactly what's missing from your life? And do you like that, or does it freak you out? If you shop online, do you check that the site is genuine before you enter your personal or financial information? And do you use the same password for everything, just because it's easier to remember? So everything now, from telephony to television, how we study, how we shop, how we bank, how we heat our homes, plan our journeys, all of these are now digitized and fueled by an explosion in big data. And technology doesn't just connect us to people and services when we want them. Our devices themselves are connected to each other. They communicate amongst themselves and they share data about us and what we're doing, whether we like it or not. The Internet of Things, and that's the means by which our devices talk to each other, is transforming our domestic lives. But as well as the huge convenience, it also makes us more vulnerable and has greater consequences than many realize. So things are moving at such pace in the tech world that the people that we traditionally look to make informed decisions about what's right and wrong are themselves struggling to keep up. So parents are unaware of their children's life online and how to help them manage it. Bosses struggle to predict the new skills that their staff need to meet changing consumer habits and growing automation. Policymakers often can't see the wood for the trees when trying to regulate or legislate in this shifting world. So what is increasingly lacking as technology develops is the awareness and the understanding of the implications of the online world that we inhabit. And with it, the ability and the support to continually update our skills and knowledge to keep up. A few years ago, we might have thought that at least running a B&B or being a taxi driver was safe from digital disruption. But oh no, companies like Airbnb and Uber have radically changed the rules without even having a bed or a taxi. And a report by Dell Technologies last summer estimated that 85% of the jobs that will exist in 2030, it's only 12 years away, haven't yet been invented. And whether or not that's accurate, and we all know how incredibly difficult it is to predict the future, the fact remains that the world of work is changing, and changing fast. We've all heard technology described as disruptive. It disrupts the status quo, and it forces innovation and new thinking. It changes the rules. Digital disruption is unstoppable, and to try and fight it is pointless. And actually, why would we want to? Because it reflects consumer demand and our ever-constant quest for easier, faster, and better. Robotics, biometrics, blockchain, big data, these are all part of our world, and none of us can afford to ignore it. But this isn't just disrupting services and traditional industries. It's also beginning to disrupt the way we, ordinary people, view the world. How many of you here in this room use some form of social media? Hands up. Right. Most of you, if not all of you. And that's interesting, because by using social media, we're saying that we're much more comfortable with living our lives in public. We don't seem to value privacy in the way we have before. But how many of us are truly aware that the very way that social media works means that our individual worldviews and prejudices are constantly reinforced rather than challenged? Because the way the information is served online is designed to do exactly that. So we may not mind that Facebook shows us cat videos or that Twitter tells us who to follow. But when that type of personalization starts to affect our understanding of the world more broadly, creating so-called filter bubbles, where we only see or hear views similar to our own, or when it's manipulated in a much more sinister way to micro-target vulnerable groups, or when it leads to violent extremism, trust, then who and what we can trust online is called into question. Unintended consequences is a phrase that I use a lot these days. It's the flip side of the technology revolution. It's the advent of fake news, of filter bubbles, of algorithms that produce results that reflect racist, sexist, or other bias, even though we assume that the underlying data is totally neutral. And this is where a non-diverse workforce has serious consequences. So remember that only 17% of those working in tech are women. So if we extrapolate from that, albeit very simplistically, we could say that that means that 83% of the algorithms that influence some of the fairly fundamental decisions that we're making about our lives are programmed by men. So how does that suit the 50% of the population that are women? Professor Dame Wendy Hall, eminent professor of computer science and expert in artificial intelligence, recently said, "We cannot allow our world to be organized by algorithms whose creators are dominated by one gender, ethnicity, age, or culture. And if we don't challenge this lack of diversity in tech, we risk ending up living in a world that resembles a teenage boy's smelly bedroom. Those are her words, not mine. And of course, it's not just about gender. You may have heard in the summer about the new form of automatic hand dryer that only worked when a light-skinned hand was placed under it and not a dark-skinned one, because all the testers had been white. That's not okay. So however advanced we think we are, we're still in the foothills of artificial intelligence and machine learning. We're nowhere near the summit. And yet, AI and machine learning are already dominating the products and services that we use every day, with all of the human error and bias that we're unwittingly programming into them. And we need to acknowledge this reality. We're changing the rules right here in Corsham. It may be just a small town in the west of England, but thanks to Brunel's vision and his refusal to follow the rules, it's a town with a rich heritage of innovation. What's perhaps less well known is that it sits at the intersection of an extraordinary combination of communications, defense, intelligence, cyber and data infrastructures. So where better to start building a connected society to inspire other communities? And that's what we hope to do through Corsham Institute's Communities programme, using the town as the testbed for much of our work. We'll be working with the community to identify trends, approaches, and solutions for our digital future. And we want as many of you, the residents of Corsham, as possible to get involved. We're starting with a Safer Internet project to coincide with Safer Internet Day. It involves all the 10 local schools, as well as businesses, local government, the police, and youth and community groups. We're also launching a pilot project to look at data protection from a citizen's perspective. You may have heard of GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, that comes into force in May, or you may not. But whether you have or not, it has implications for every single one of us, and we all need to understand what it means for us. So these two projects will demonstrate the power of changing the rules, starting with one specific local community, your community, and turning ideas into practical action. And this isn't just for the benefit of Corsham. What we learn here will be used to influence the digital future we all want to see nationally. Ultimately, it all comes down to skills and learning. We want everyone to have the skills they need to harness the enormous opportunities that digital brings, while protecting themselves from the unanticipated harms. This is lifelong learning. This is adapting to a constantly changing world that requires us to interact with technology in increasingly new ways, whether we like it or not. And these skills aren't just specialist tech skills for geeks or for boffins. These are life skills for all of us, like problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. And they're also learned behaviors, like resilience, respect, empathy, and trust. We need our kids to grow up with inquiring minds that question what they see, to use judgment to tell fact from fiction. We need teachers to have the skills to teach not just how to use digital tools, but how to live in a changing digital world without getting lost in it. We need parents to understand and trust their own use of technology, not to turn away from it if they're going to help their kids to succeed. We need organizations to train their workforce in the new skills needed in an increasingly automated economy and to identify new business models that are truly fit for a digital age. We need social, civic, and political institutions to be far more fleet of foot, to anticipate the changes, to develop future-proofed, not backward-looking policies that will help everyone thrive in a connected society. And we need our leaders to understand and defend our digital vulnerability, just as they've always defended our geographical vulnerability. Because it won't be traditional weapons that pose the greatest threat to us, but a cyber attack on our vital infrastructure. So we need everyone, kids, adults, consumers, customers, citizens, whatever we want to call ourselves, to feel empowered and not overpowered by their digital future. We cannot afford to be passive or to sleepwalk into the future. We all need to have confidence in our shared society and to consciously create the digital world that we want, or we will get a world we don't want. And we need to change the rules to do so. We need, above all, to regain trust. Trust in institutions, in organizations, in experts, and in tech itself. And to increase our ability to adapt to constant change, if we're to make the most of what is a technology-dominated world. And that way, we really can create a fair, inclusive, connected society and rewrite the rule book with our eyes wide open. Thank you.